We're going to go to Liz Cheney. She's on another Sunday show. She's on ABC's This Week. She's going to talk to George Stephanopoulos and Katrina vanden Heuvel, who's going to make an excellent point here. And as soon as she makes it, you can tell the nervous energy in the room. Oh, my God, she said something that's true. Everybody starts to panic, and there's somebody in the room who's defending torture, and we don't want to offend her. But Katrina pushes the conversation into the right direction, and she's exactly right. And if she wasn't there, nobody else would have brought that point up. And then you'll see Liz Cheney's awful, weak sauce answer. Let's watch.
The next big controversy is the mounting evidence showing that torture was used to extract evidence to create a link, a false link, between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda. That is a crucial area of investigation.
Let me try to give a little more context here, and then let Liz respond. But let me just explain to the viewers what Katrina, just a little more context on what she's talking about. There were some reports this week that the Vice President's office actually, back in 2003, in April of 2003, I believe, sent some sort of word to Iraq that a detainee in custody should be waterboarded in order to get information to establish whether there was a connection between Iraq and Al-Qaeda or more information on weapons of mass destruction. Your response?
On this particular allegation, nobody who's talking about this in the press has any knowledge of specific detainee treatment. And you saw the CIA yesterday come out and say, absolutely, unequivocally, waterboarding was not used to establish this kind of a link.
I have not
now,
seen,
well, you should read it.
There was a lot of things. But let me just, I want to press one thing there, because there was a report. No, but you've explained one part of it. I just want to ask you to explain another part of it. The report, though, that the Vice President's office did ask specifically to have information about Iraq Al-Qaeda connections presented to this detainee. Do you deny that?
I think that it's important for us to have all the facts out. And the first and most important fact is that the Vice President has been absolutely clear that he supported this program. This was an important program. It saved American lives. Now, the way this policy worked internally was, once the policy was determined and decided, the CIA made the judgments about how each individual detainee would be treated. And the Vice President would not substitute his own judgment for the professional judgment of the CIA. And I think, frankly, you've also got to look at the source of some of these allegations. And one of the big sources is, Colonel Wilkerson. Now, Colonel Wilkerson gets coverage because of his associations with General Powell.
Former Chief of Staff.
Has made a cottage industry out of, fantasies about the Vice President.
He's not
Cottage industry out of fantasies. Otherwise known as truths. He's the one inside the administration that had access to all of this, and he's the one telling the truth on it. And they're like, oh yeah, listen to his fantasies with all the facts and evidence he has. Please don't listen to him. By the way, you will get your chance to listen to Colonel Wilkerson on the Young Turks later this week. Anna Kasparian, a woot to the woot. Excellent job of booking Colonel Wilkerson, so you have that to look forward to a little later in the week. So let's get to what she's saying. She says, that Iraqi detainee story, nobody has any information on it. Really? How about the information that's in the report that Cheney's office said, hey, go ahead and waterboard the detainees we caught after we invaded Iraq to try to get a link between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda. That's his go-to move, as Katrina vanden Heuvel points out. And that's not the only instance. There are at least 4 different sources saying before the Iraq invasion and now after the Iraq invasion, Cheney insisted to the CIA, get me a link between Saddam and 9/11. I don't care how you do it. And time again, the CIA would come back and say, there is no such link. We've tried everything. We waterboarded one guy 183 times and still couldn't get that link. And of course, after the invasion, why do you waterboard a guy? That guy in Iraq? What, you think he had a ticking time bomb for something that's going to go off in America? Of course not. That guy in Iraq has absolutely nothing to do with any imminent attack on America. They didn't even have any weapons of mass destruction. They weren't in any way, shape linked to Al-Qaeda or 9/11. Why did they waterboard him? Because they wanted the false information, the false confessions. And it was done for, and this is why it's so damaging and why Liz Cheney's in a panic, it was done for political purposes. They tortured people for political purposes, not because there was an imminent threat against the United States. Otherwise, they would have never done it to an Iraqi detainee. We had that country under control, which we then later lost, but had nothing to do with a threat against the United States. So, and that's why they're so worried about that story. And of course she says, oh, no, the CIA said that we didn't do that. Oh, well, right, okay. Then if the CIA said it, it must be true. Besides which, I have not heard that the CIA said that at all. And that's why you heard a lot of people saying, not true, not true. She said the CIA has said, oh, we never waterboarded anyone to get a link between Iraq and Al-Qaeda. In fact, I have seen several stories, and we've quoted them on the show, where CIA officers say, yes, that's exactly what the vice president told us to do. And then finally, what is their claim? It wasn't us. We didn't want to waterboard anybody. The CIA made those decisions, and we didn't want to interfere with their decisions. Wasn't me, 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 wasn't me. Yeah. They ordered the torture, and if they ever get caught, they're like, oh, no, it wasn't us. It was the CIA, or it was low-level soldiers, it was the troops, it was the president, it was the Justice Department, but it wasn't Dick Cheney. Then why is he the one going, sending out his daughter, his dog, his duck, everybody he's got to defend torture all over television? Because he's the one who ordered it.